our fearless editor and publisher, and really the mastermind behind the book. We have Wofford Lee Jones. Please allow me to introduce him. Wofford Lee Jones is a horror thriller writer who loves coffee, a good book, and a great story. His love for horror grew from watching movies in the late 70s, early 80s. However, it was only in his 20s that he started reading horror. He enjoys art, drawing, painting, watching live theater and movies, traveling, reading, book cover design and book formatting, and supporting his fellow writers, as I've learned. Nightly and on the weekends, he can be found with a hot cup of coffee, studiously banging out that next chilling tale. He always strives to keep it dark, disturbing, and a little bit creepy. Welcome to his darkness. He lives in Greenville, South Carolina with his wife, Lori. He is working on his 5th and 6th solo books, a collection of stories titled Fatal Potions, and a psychological thriller novel, Becoming Allie Winter. He is also teaming up with a multi-genre author, D.A. Schneider, you'll meet him later, writing a horror beach survival novel, Horror on Vacation, as well as adding an offering to a Halloween novella anthology, All Hallows Feast, hopefully coming out this October 2026, just in time for Halloween. Stay tuned. There is much more darkness coming down the pike. Consider signing up for his monthly newsletter. It comes out the 3rd of every month, and a free flash fiction story comes out on the 18th of each month. This is a gift for his subscriber. So I'm going to put the link in the chat for you to find out more about him, but I am going to leave the stage, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Wooford. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Elaine. Appreciate it. I am going to be reading from chapter 4 of my story, Behind the Glass, and I just wanted to give everybody a little prologue of leading up to this. My main character, Jill Danforth, has witnessed her husband talking in his sleep and making motions that he has murdered somebody. And through some soul searching, she decides to follow him to get some answers to these questions. So I'm picking up in the middle of chapter 4 to the end of chapter 4. She was just stepping out of the house when a still small voice that argued with her from time to time talked directly to her. Don't you think you need to consider taking some kind of protection with you in case things get hairy? She paused, thinking of this suggestion and that phrase, in case things get hairy. That was a phrase Craig often used. I guess I should. Damn right you should. She glanced out the door toward the front again. No one was out there in the driveway. She stepped back in and closed the door and moved into the living room and surveyed it, pulling up a mental map of where Craig hid his guns. Craig Danforth didn't keep his guns in a gun safe in his closet or somewhere away from the main living areas. He always hid his guns in plain sight. Well, not exactly plain sight, but close enough to get your hands on it in case there was ever a home invasion. It was something Craig always feared, and he said he always wanted to protect his family. His whole thought process wasn't out of the realm of possibility, but the way he approached it with the solution was humorous to her. She never let on how silly she thought it was. Craig always seemed serious that it could happen one day. She knew the shotgun attached to the underside of the couch was out of the realm of, was out of question for her protection. She didn't need that much firepower. She had always felt a shotgun was crazy overkill anyway, and it was almost laughable that he had gone to so much trouble. She could go for the Glock that was underneath the coffee table. The way the coffee table was made, with the raised shelf that was 8 to 9 inches off the ground, it concealed the Glock that was hidden beneath nicely. Whoever sat in front of the center of the table would have time to lean forward, pull the gun from the holster attached to the bottommost shelf, and come up firing. The threat that was there would no longer be a threat. Jill could get the 9mm that was in the pocket of the recliner Craig always sat in. If a home invasion ever happened, they would have to make sure that one of them sat in the recliner if forced to be seated in the living room. When the invaders were distracted, all anyone would have to do was snake a hand down inside the pocket of the recliner, extract the 9mm hidden there, and unload on said invader, and that would be all he or she wrote. There were others throughout the house. Jill didn't need to mentally go through the whole list. She put them all out of her head except for the one that she thought was beautiful and special to her. She moved to the entertainment center and pulled a decorative box from the chest-high shelf. She knelt beside the coffee table and placed the box in front of her with reverence. It's the way she always approached guns, with a huge amount of respect. Flipping the latch, she opened the box and let the lid touch down, leaving the revolver fully exposed. She took a moment just to stare at it and take it in. It was a Smith & Wesson, Model 66, snub-nosed revolver with a 2.5-inch barrel. It was polished steel with thick wooden hand grips. She liked this gun. It had a presence, but not like Clint Eastwood hand cannon. Enough to be a hard threat in her mind, but not so powerful that she wouldn't be able to control its kick should she need to pull the trigger. She knew how to control it. She had shot it many times at the gun range whenever they went. She wasn't afraid of this revolver or any of Craig's handguns. Before Haley disappeared, she, Craig, and even Haley had gone to the range quite often, and that being scared of guns feeling had long since disappeared from them all. Jill knew her way around guns. She flipped the lock, snapped it to the side, and let the cylinder fall open. She saw it was fully loaded. All the guns in the house were loaded as a precaution. She jerked her wrist to the right. It snapped shut, and she shoved it into the front pocket of her backpack. She pulled the 2 boxes of bullets and added them to the same pocket, but they were placed in a smaller compartment within so they would be out of the way. Closing the lid and fastening it again, she returned the box to the exact place on the shelf where she had taken it. Jill turned, grabbed her backpack and jacket. Turning again, her eyes landed on the end table closest to the windows that looked out on the wooded backyard. A pair of binoculars stood on end. Backtracking, Jill snagged them quickly. Could be useful in spying on Craig, she thought, and stuffed them into her backpack, then moved to the side door again and locked it as she left. As she reached her car and sliding into the seat, a memory from a few days ago surfaced in her mind. It was of Craig sitting at the kitchen table, cleaning the very revolver she now had in her backpack. Another flash memory. Craig's hand rising in the darkness, and then a flinch of his hand like real recoil had moved it as though he had taken someone's life in a dream. Was the revolver I took part of an earlier crime? The thought stopped her cold, and she looked over the steering wheel back at the house she called home. It will be a question I ask him when this inevitable confrontation happens. Jill and the house suddenly didn't feel safe anymore.